The sun, and it's all about Swiss Round 5 here at Anaheim 2025. That's the Ho, and it's the shiny variant. Shiny Hunters rejoice alongside Fluttermane and Koraidon and Fluttermane. And that Koraidon is about to set up the sun for both of Yoshitaka's Pokemon.
Yeah, Yoshitaka's already taken advantage of what Shoma wants to do here, but both players really do want sun on the field, and you kind of take the gamble, well, one of us is going to set up sun eventually, so may as well be my opponent for me, and getting the Ho-Oh in there really nice and early. Now, the Ho-Oh with a clear amulet doesn't mind about anything like the Icy Wind on the Fluttermane, and certainly won't take too much damage, so the Ho-Oh in prime position to start putting damage on the board here. More importantly, I think, the Sacred Fire in the sun easily going to be enough to take Fluttermane down to the Focus Sash. Probably one of the only Pokemon in the format that can then knock it out through the Focus Sash with the burn.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be fascinating if that burn chance did come true, and it's a good chance. 50% chance of a burn from that Sacred Fire, and that is, of course, why Ho-Oh is the undisputed GOAT, and I don't know why we haven't been seeing more of it in Regulation Set I so far. Lugia, where are you? But Ho-Oh at least is here. The only one on the field, as a reminder, trainers. Let's see what these trainers are able to afford here as Fluttermane just scouts out. It's going for that Protect, not going to take any damage. So is Koraidon. Do we have a third Protect on the Bingo Tuck card? Show it to us.
I don't think we do.
Just the targeted move down into the Fluttermane from Shoma's own Fluttermane here, rounding out the turn. Ho-Oh able to go for the Sacred Fire.
Here it is.
Is it going to get the burn in Shoma's Fluttermane here? Ooh!
Wait for it. Hold.
Yes! There's the burn. So Fluttermane is going to go down at the end of this turn. Yoshitaka takes an early advantage.
You got two options there with the Ho-Oh as well. You can go for the Tailwind and try not to play those speed games, or you know that the Ho-Oh is pretty safe, so why not lock in an attack, especially when the Fluttermane on Shoma's side doesn't actually carry Protect? Like, why would you not just try to remove it from play? Then you've got your own Fluttermane with the Photosynthesis boost. That's going to be the fastest Pokemon out there, and it's putting so much pressure on. And I think one of the things in the back with the Raging Bolt carrying the Life Orb is that these Raging Bolts usually are carrying quite a bit of bulk, but these Life Orb ones tend to be fast and offensive, and so having a Fluttermane, this is going to sound like an obvious statement, is definitely better than not having a Fluttermane in those kind of situations.
Ben, you have been playing competitive Pokemon since, what, 2010? And
yeah,
the insight you've just provided,
you know
there,
what?
Mind blown.
It's better to have 4 Pokemon than 3 sometimes.
Wow, Ben. Wow, you're going to have to tell me more about that after this game, because Calyrex Ice Rider has just joined the fray here. Potentially really vulnerable to an incoming Sacred Fire from Ho-Oh, but let's see. Heading into the next turn, just what Calyrex is able to achieve. Of course, you've got the Terra Fire there, so you can keep yourself at a little bit safer. Raging Bolt could be a good switch in as well.
It's really important for the burn as well, but with the Koraidon just going for the Protect as well, both of these Pokemon are really pulling for the Terra choice. This is one of the downfalls sometimes of this team composition that Shoma's running. Do you go Terra Fire on the Koraidon so you don't get knocked out straight away by a Moonblast? Or do you go Terra Fire on the Calyrex so you don't take super effective damage from a Sacred Fire and maybe get burned?
Yeah, you're so right. The Koraidon has been so vulnerable since the start of this game. So how is Shoma going to play it? Of course, you have the Raging Bolt in the back, which is also going to take super effective damage from a Moonblast. Yeah. Going to be time to pull that Terra button, trainers. Going to be getting all sparkly on Shoma's Koraidon, going for its Terra Fire, and I don't even want to think about all of the stacks this Koraidon has now. Terra Fire in the sun, and you've got the Clear Amulet to reduce those attack drops. The Moonblast instead targeted into the Calyrex Ice Rider on Shoma's side. That special attack drop does not matter. That's a physical attacker, trainers. Now, the Flare Blitz into Ho-Oh, just for, well, you know, chip damage, about a quarter of its HP. Oh no, sorry, Flame Charge there, boosting the speed up as well. Crucial into the next turn, that's going to be the Sacred Fire that connects into the Calyrex Ice Rider. Just going to be that big, a one-hit KO.
Wow, I'm lost for words here. Yoshitaka really taking the advantage, pressing the ability for that Ho-Oh to be able to take so many attacks from Shoma's side, and Shoma just not able to get safely that Raging Bolt in position so that it can actually stand in front of this Terra Water Ho-Oh and be able to put some pressure on it, stop it from just taking KO after KO. But you got to remember how much of a read that was, and I think the temptation for Shoma would probably be to try to get into Trick Room, but without knowing how fast or slow that Ho-Oh is, if this Raging Bolt is a bit faster, the Ho-Oh is trained a little bit on the slow side, then maybe setting up Trick Room actually wouldn't give you an advantage. So you can see exactly what Shoma's trying to play out here, but this Ho-Oh is just doing so much work.
Shoma came in wanting to win this game 1, but Yoshitaka was like, Ho-Oh, no you don't, my friend. Ho-Oh is absolutely swooping for glory right now, with only 2 Pokemon available to Shoma, all 4 for Yoshitaka. Is there any way now that Shoma can turn this around?
You know, it's an uphill battle, but the Koraidon did get the speed boost, which may give it the opportunity to outspeed the Flutter Mane here, but with a Focus Sash, you would have to commit a Thunderclap into it. Not going to be this turn, though, because there's a Protect on the Flutter Mane. I think Yoshitaka playing this defensively is a really good idea, but Shoma's got to preserve all their resources as much as possible to have a chance here at 4-2 down.
So, move targeted there into... Raging that Bolt's neck is so big, I couldn't see. The Protect Shield is just totally blocked. But the Brave Bird now, no longer super effective. Koraidon brought down to a nice, neat 100 HP, just continuing to chip away. But of course, that also, thanks to the recoil damage, will be going right back onto Ho-Oh.
This is like the difficult thing now, because the Koraidon, if you're Shoma, is starting to get into maybe range of a Shadow Ball. A lot of these Focus Sash Flutter Manes don't need to invest in their defensive capabilities. They just go fast and offensive, so they can really take advantage of that. And if that wasn't enough and the Thunderclap isn't enough to take the KO onto Ho-Oh, you've got another potentially Brave Bird coming out there. You've got to be thinking at this stage as well what Yoshitaka has had in the back. Maybe that's the consolation prize here for Shoma.
Yeah.
Try to take 1 knockout here and see what Yoshitaka was actually running so they can adjust that little bit better for game 2.
So potentially a failed Thunderclap there, not activating because of lack of damage, with the Flutter Mane going for the Taunt. Koraidon can no longer protect, but it's just attacking this turn anyway.
Yeah.
Now with another Flame Charge onto Flutter Mane, brought down to its Focus Sash. So, you know, if there is a Pokemon that might be able to turn around for Shoma, it's going to be this speedy Koraidon. It's filled up with gas, but it's now going to have to take another Brave Bird, hanging on with just 4 HP now. Yoshitaka whittling away, Ho-Oh rising from the ashes.
You've got to think there's probably something with a little bit of priority in the back as well, whether it's the Incineroar with a Fake Out. You've got the opportunity for Raging Bolt to come out with a Thunderclap as well. So lots of options here still for Yoshitaka.
I really like this from Yoshitaka, though, just not revealing those 2 Pokemon in the back, because it means heading into the next game, you have so many more options in Shoma's team. You do not want to give an inch where they could take a mile. Don't want to give anything away. Reveal that game plan. It means that Shoma will be even more on the back foot heading into the next game. And there it is, Ho-Oh switching all the nicer thanks to its Regenerator ability. So it will have recovered some HP back in its Pokeball. Now Incineroar has joined the fray instead. Clear Amulet on the Koraidon, so the Intimidate not going to do anything there. Raging Bolt doesn't mind an Intimidate drop.
But of course, the Incineroar coming in has got the Rocky Helmet as well, so that's one way that this 4 HP Koraidon could get knocked out this turn.
Yeah, so tempting to go for that fighting time move into the Incineroar here, but yeah, going to be the low kick, which is an adaptation we've seen heading into the World Championships as well. Still massive damage, and as you love to say, Ben, of course, this is a format with lots of heavy Pokemon. As regulators say, oh, we've got 2 restricted. Incineroar not the heaviest, but still big damage boosted by that Orichalcum Pulse. Yeah,
definitely enough to put some pressure on the Incineroar still, but yeah, revealing Incineroar not necessarily much of a surprise in these sort of matchups. Certainly when you've got a Koraidon, you want that fake out pressure. So I think this is a great way for Yoshitaka to try to close up this game safely without actually revealing too much information, too much of their thought process. It's like, hey, there's the support Pokemon in the back. Like, did you expect that to come?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, probably.
Oh my goodness, you had Incineroar. We haven't seen that in competitive Pokemon since about 10
Pokemon?
minutes ago.
Incineroar?
I think it's called Incineroar. I know we say it so rarely, but I don't know. Well, we could just call it Firecat for now. But Shoma just taking that time to decide, heading into game 2, what the game plan is going to be. It looks like their back's against the wall. We saw them hover over the forfeit button there, but deciding, well, no, I can just use this time to study up and decide how I'm going to flip things around to make sure that Yoshitaka doesn't get such a decisive advantage heading into the next game.
I feel like we have these sort of situations pretty much every single time, and when you're on the world stage, there is no better time to just take a little bit of extra time to think and process exactly what you're going to be playing for the next match. But I think that's the forfeit locked in there, and it is Yoshitaka taking game 1 here, going ever closer to getting to day 2 here at the World Championships.
Oh, yeah, he did. Incredible to see. We didn't even see Yoshitaka's Koraidon. Now, We don't know if that was the fourth and final Pokemon in the back. The temptation is to assume that because it's double restricted format. You want to bring both of your very powerful legendaries, but maybe trying to catch Shoma off guard there.
I think the Scale Shot is actually a really good example of why you want to take Koraidon into this matchup.
Yeah,
and maybe if the Raging Bolt was there that little bit earlier, we could have seen an appearance. We don't know. Of course, it was never revealed what Yoshitaka's fourth Pokemon was. Would have been great information for Shoma, but no such luck, as we see a little bit of a replay. If you're just joining us on the stream here, Swiss round 5 at the World Championships, and seeing how Ho-Oh, the only one in the field, is on an absolute tear this round.
Oh yeah, the only Ho-Oh in the entire tournament, but showing that maybe some trainers should have considered it more seriously. But Ben, listen, buddy, listen, my friend.
I'm here.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to ask you, don't you, Jimmy Bendrix? And that question is, how is Shoma going to be adapting heading into the next game?
Yeah, so I think arguably you've got to find a better way to target in the early game. You've got to put pressure onto that Ho-Oh, and I think what Shoma did well was to try to play around what was going on, but he didn't quite get the calls right in the moment. And I think if you're going to be playing up against a Pokemon that you're really going to struggle to do any damage to, you've got to sit there and think really hard, as like, how am I actually going to get the KOs there? I wouldn't have minded to see the Terra Fire onto the Calyrex instead, knowing that Koraidon actually wasn't doing enough to the Ho-Oh overall. You see the Flutter Mane there, it's really good to get the speed boost going with a Flame Charge and try to knock that out, but then the speed boosts kind of don't really do anything after that point, so you're not really making as much progress as you want to. So I think a little bit more prioritization on the Calyrex Ice Rider would be really nice from Shoma going into Game 2.
What do you think about a Trick Room switch up?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I mean, we don't know what the training is between the Raging Bolt and the Ho-Oh, but I think we may be about to find out.
Okay then, well, it's time for our second game in this Japan battle on the stage. Which of them is going to be emerging on top? We have 2015 World Champion Shoma Honami going up against the only Ho-Oh bringer out there at the World Championships, Yoshitaka Izawa. Going to be Calyrex Ice Rider in the lead this time around, so we could be seeing a Trick Room strategy online. And with a Terra Fire, I'm not sure there's much Yoshitaka can do to deny that. Yeah,
it's a perfect switch up here from Shoma. Not going to take the early damage quite so readily in this position. And although the Flutter Mane can go for a taunt and shut down a Trick Room, we've seen time after time in this format where Calyrex just wants to go on the offensive straight away with a Glacial Lance. Now, that could be an opportunity for Shoma to just go straight for the Trick Room, but it could also just be an opportunity to get some damage on the Flutter Mane, take it down to its Focus Sash, put some damage onto the Ho-Oh, make sure that that's not so difficult to be able to knock out. But one thing that we have to think about is whether or not this Ho-Oh is going to go for its Terra Water and sort of shut down the super effective damage or the big damage from Glacial Lance.
You're so right about the taunt on the Flutter Mane there, Ben, but it will be leaving the field, and joining in its place will be, of course, that Incineroar, that's what it's called. Yeah. Dropping the attack stats of both Calyrex Ice Rider and Incineroar for Shoma. Now time for that terrestrialization, time to get sparkly, and it's going to be Calyrex Ice Rider saying, listen, you've got a bunch of fire types in this game. I want to embrace that side of things as well. Calyrex Ice Rider has become Calyrex Fire Rider, charging up the surroundings. Now Ho-Oh just will be scanning out with its Protect. Let's not forget there's no clear amulet on this Calyrex, so any Glacial Lancers won't be hitting as hard. The U-turn, a little bit of Rocky Helmet chip damage, which onto a cat as bulky as Incineroar will go such a long way. And now Shoma can pivot something in from the back.
The U-turn is so nice here because this is the opportunity for Shoma to get that Raging Bolt on the field without too much risk. You know that the Flutter Mane's already left the field. That's the primary Pokemon that you're trying to avoid. You know that the Ho-Oh is protected. Here comes the Raging Bolt to put some pressure on. Glacial Lance coming out, not risking any form of taunt shenanigans, but now there's no taunt on the field, but there is a Fake Out.
Fake Out that could, of course, deny the Trick Room heading into the next turn as well. Raging Bolt pressuring the Ho-Oh, and Ho-Oh here has Terra Water, so it cannot get away from that Electrify weakness, and that is something that Yoshitaka can very much use to their advantage.
You know, the other thing that I'm thinking is a really good strategy here for this Calyrex, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but Leech Seed actually onto Ho-Oh looks really, really good in this kind of situation, just to gently whittle away at your opponent's HP bar. And yeah, maybe it switches out and gets all that Regenerator HP back, but I think it could be a way to start pressuring it while you're playing defensively, while you're protecting from these Fake Outs and pivots.
speaking of Protect, that's exactly what Raging Bolt is going for here. Move targeted down into Shoma's Raging Bolt. And now we turn our attention over to the Ho-Oh. A Brave Bird now into the Terrifier. Calyrex Ice Rider takes that handily. And it's going to be the Calyrex responding with a Glacial Lance here. Again, just good for some chip. Of course, neutral onto the Ho-Oh there.
Yeah, it's like... I like the fact that the Ho-Oh isn't actually going for the terrestrialization in this early game. I think it makes it maybe a little bit more difficult for Yoshitaka's end game, where you don't necessarily want to commit it until you know that's exactly what you want to do. Whereas Shoma's committed it quite early, and if Yoshitaka takes advantage of that, then maybe there's a really nice route to an end game there. I'm just kind of wondering what Yoshitaka's plan is for this Raging Bolt now, because there's some calls to make in this turn. If the Ho-Oh plays on the defensive, you can just take advantage of it by going for a Thunderbolt and another Glacial Lance into the Incineroar slot. It's not going to be able to protect itself when you whittle away that supportive pieces that Yoshitaka didn't need to really take advantage of in the last game, but actually this game could be quite important.
Yes, another Brave Bird, and that Leech Seed is looking like an even more attractive proposition now, especially with the lack of high horsepower. Finally, the Raging Bolt goes on the offensive, KOs this Ho-Oh. It's returning all the way back to Johto, and Yoshitaka's Pokemon that put in so much work in that previous game is now removed from contention. Parting Shot means that Raging Bolt won't be hitting as hard. Now Yoshitaka can pivot something in from the back.
What do you pivot in this situation? Because whatever you pivot is likely to take a Glacial Lance in this spot. And yeah, okay, the Calyrex has taken an Intimidate, but it's definitely not something that you want to be on the pointy end of.
As Fluttermane will be rejoining the field. No, absolutely, those Glacial Lances have been sharpened, but Leech Seed now will be able to chip away at this Fluttermane. And it's a really good call because you're immediately going to break the focus sash on Yoshitaka's Fluttermane.
And with probably an Incineroar coming in for Yoshitaka here, there's a perfect opportunity to compound that recovery. This Calyrex set has been gaining popularity over the last few months and certainly seen a big rise in NAIC and our grassroots tours in between NAIC and the World Championships for good reason. It's these situations where you just need that extra little bit of HP in an end game. But now we see the Koraidon coming in for Yoshitaka and putting some real pressure on. Calyrex Ice Rider is one of those heavy Pokemon, as is Raging Bolt, that takes maximum damage from the low kick. So it's kind of like having a close combat, but without having to take those special defense and special defense drops.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you're not going to be softening up your Koraidon that way. And we can see that Yoshitaka now has brought that Koraidon that was as of yet unrevealed in the previous game, which is threatening down those scale shots, which if Shoma does have their Koraidon in the back, they can no longer terrestrialize away from their Dragon-type weakness. And they do.
Yeah, it's like... I'm struggling in this position because there's a lot that could go right and a lot that could go wrong for both of our players here. If you don't target down the Raging Bolt, then Raging Bolt is just going to start dropping Draco Meteors into your Dragon Pulses, should I say, into that Koraidon. But can it do that safely in front of a Fluttermane? Well, maybe is the answer now that the Fluttermane leaves the field.
And Incineroar rejoins, providing another active Faker heading into the next turn. And yeah, this Calyrex is not having a fantastic day at the office. It's taken multiple Intimidate drops now, not hitting that hard at all. Raging Bolt also will be drawing its neck back in, switching in its place will be Shoma's own Incineroar again. Now, with Koraidon holding the loaded dice instead of Clear Amulet, Yoshitaka's own Koraidon will be suffering from that attack drop. Time to get Sparkly over on Yoshitaka's side of the field. Koraidon has now gone for its Terrifier.
Yeah, I like this play quite a lot. You don't take super effective damage from the Dragon Pulse. Does make you a little bit susceptible to a Thunderclap in the end game, but Scale Shot coming out here.
Now, the loaded dice means that it's going to hit at least 4 times, but do we have a cheeky 5th? That's going to be 4. No, but it's not like it was close to getting any kind of KO there either. But crucially, now the Koraidon has got a boost to its speed, but a drop to its defense. Calyrex has found the wiggle room to set up that trick room. Is it going to be the right call here? The Leech Seed is going such a long way. The leftovers are going such a long way. Maybe this horse has what it takes to weather the storm.
With the Terrifier and the Intimidates going down and actually affecting the Koraidon, also I feel like we're getting close to the end of Sun in this position as well, which would make the Koraidon on both sides of the field feel just that little bit weaker, and certainly would allow some time for the Calyrex to get some leech seeds down, start to maintain that HP recovery to keep it in the game for a long time. I think Shoma's doing a really good job here of positioning it well enough that even though that it's got some intimidates, it's still actually putting some pressure on overall, and knowing that what he's got in the back actually could be what he needs to close out this game. A Raging Bolt in Trick Room for a Koraidon team on your opposition is not a happy place to be.
Yeah, that's why Leech Seed goes such a long way when your Calyrex is that intimidated. But speaking of going such a long way, that's going to be Calyrex going all the way back to his trainer, and now coming in its place, going to be Raging Bolt once more with the Sun boosting its photosynthesis. This means likely that will be a special attack boost there, as Koraidon won't be able to move. Just the fake out, the responding fake out, but of course going after Shoma's own potential indication that Shoma has the slower Incineroar here, because we are now in Trick Room, potentially a speed tie, but you can train Incineroar approximately a billion different ways, so...
Yeah, this is definitely the avoidance of the gentleman's rule of VGC is you never fake out the fake out Pokemon, you always go for the other one just in case your Incineroars are trained just that little bit differently. But now getting the Raging Bolt in a great spot with its photosynthesis activated. Incineroar on Yoshitaka's side of the field will be going first and could potentially knock off that Life Orb, but with the photosynthesis boost, it's almost like second place, where you're actually probably doing enough damage to the Koraidon anyway to, if not KO it, put it under serious pressure from your Calyrex in the back, regardless of that resistance now with the Terra Fire.
Oh yeah, so that's going to be the loaded dice down and out for Yoshitaka here. Scale Shot now hitting a minimum of 2 times. Parting Shot, so Incineroar won't be hitting as hard now. This means that Yoshitaka's Incineroar will be switching out. In its place, they have to decide on something that can withstand these Trick Room turns. Well, it's going to have to be that Flutter Mane, and with the Focus Sash already broken, all the softer, but can Yoshitaka see this Trick Room through?
I think it's going to be a little bit tough, especially we'll see the Thunderbolt coming in. I thought that was going to go into the Koraidon, but instead it's in the Flutter Mane, and it's a KO.
Yoshitaka's Flutter Mane down. Not quite the one-hit KO, of course. It had that Focus Sash broken earlier on in the game, but still close enough. And now,
Scale Shot.
Scale Shot. That's a massive amount of damage with the critical hit, but it might only be hidden twice, given that the loaded dice is not off. But no, it's going to be the 3-time Raging Bolt has been felled.
Yes, a really great KO there. Really brave for Yoshitaka to actually not go for some sort of defensive play with the Koraidon, especially when you've had your defense dropped a couple of times from Scale Shots. When you're in Trick Room against an Incineroar that's actually going to be racking up some pretty serious damage in that situation. But I really like the way that he did that, because taking those key knockouts is, I think, taking a key knockout on the Raging Bolt is definitely one of the key paths to victory here, as the Trick Room starts to whittle its way down, and the speed boost that the Koraidon has been ramping up the last few turns start to come into their own.
Yeah, that's a really good point. As Trick Room expires, Yoshitaka is going to have a very, very speedy Koraidon indeed. Shoma deciding just what to bring in this situation. Still in Trick Room, so you want to be able to benefit from those turns while you can. Yoshitaka just down to that Incineroar, so just going to be the solitary left Intimidate drop, and then that option's not going to be available, stuck on the field.
Incineroar coming in and getting a fake out turn. So there's no chance that both Incineroar are going to speed tie here with the fake out pressure on both sides of the field. And the clear amulet, of course, blocking that Incineroar Intimidate from affecting the Koraidon. Really good place for Shoma to be in this situation as well, because I think both Pokemon, both the Koraidon and the Incineroar, have a good opportunity to knock out this Koraidon on this turn. And it's also been intimidated a few times. There's something we do have to call out here. But a Scale Shot into Koraidon on Shoma's side of the field once we get out of that Trick Room environment actually could be really critical here, because it's guaranteed to be that bit faster. If you get more than 3 or 4 hits, I think even after the Intimidates, you're in a good spot to really take this game.
Yeah, but that's a big if, isn't it, without the loaded dice. So let's see if the dice is going to roll in anyone's favor. Okay, it will be Shoma. So Shoma has balanced the tables here, means that it's 1-1. We will be heading to a Game 3. And the Ho that was so crucial in Game 1, Shoma was able to take care of earlier in the game in Game 2. And now, let's see how both these trainers are going to be adapting.
Yeah, it turns out having a Calyrex is definitely better than not having a Calyrex, Charlie.
You continue
I'm going to keep having this wisdom coming out all through the day. But I think it's really key to this matchup is how you play into those restricted pairings. The Ho-Oh going down so early in the match, I think, was the downfall for Yoshitaka here, where you just don't have that ability to stand in front of your opponent's team and just soak up those hits, but also take those key knockouts at the same time. And I really do feel like there's an adaptation for Yoshitaka this time to not bring the Ho-Oh in the lead, maybe try to soften up the Calyrex Ice Rider just that little bit before bringing it out in the end game. And sometimes in those positions, it's just so difficult to knock out. It's one of the reasons that people adopted it in the early parts of the format. And with the progress for so many other different teams that have come into the fore, being just that little bit stronger, it's fallen out of favor. But I've still got to commend Yoshitaka for bringing it to the World Championships. Not only that, but doing so well with it at the same time.
Well, all bets are off. We're essentially heading into a best of one now. Just the one game remaining between these two incredible trainers. And I mean, the Incineroar is putting in so much work for both of them. If it's not the Intimidate, then it's going to be the knockoff, getting rid of, for example, the loaded dice, any item of your choice. But yeah, it's really interesting to see the Terra Water on Ho-Oh because, of course, yeah, you retain your weakness to electricity. And I'm wondering if it's to do with Calyrex Ice Rider, in fact, because you take Glacial Lance from a neutral hit to a resisted one, and that could still pay dividends in this game, but Raging Bolt, so crucial. Let's see if Raging Bolt is going to be able to rise that head above the clouds once more and see us all the way through to Shoma Honami, your 2015 world champion, claiming this game as well. Alrighty then, here's Ho-Oh and Incineroar once more for Yoshitaka. That's Calyrex and Ice Rider, Calyrex Ice Rider and Incineroar once more for Shoma.
So I like this adaptation here from Yoshitaka, not leading the Flutter main here, thinking like, well, if the Calyrex comes out, I don't want to play those taunt versus attack shenanigans in this game. I much prefer to have what I now think is a faster fake out in the Incineroar to try and put some pressure on that way. The Clear Amulet doing a lot of work, of course, on the Ho-Oh and making sure that it's not falling foul of those Intimidate drops. And so you can start to build up, if you're Yoshitaka, the extra little bit of damage onto those supportive pieces, maybe try to knock out that Incineroar a little bit earlier, make the Trick Room environment just that little bit less viable. That was the thing that catapulted Shoma to victory in Game 2.
Can Yoshitaka deny it though? Shoma pretty locked in on the Pokemon they want to bring, and I think that makes total sense. It all comes down to who's going to be playing better between these two trainers. They've got a good understanding now of how each other's teams is working. Is it going to be your 2015 world champion progressing through undefeated to Swiss round 6? Will it be Yoshitaka top 32 at the Japan Championships this year? Terastallization time. Calyrex Ice Rider goes for its Terrifier once more. Unsurprising to see a lot of firepower being threatened down by Yoshitaka's Ho-Oh into that slot. And with a neigh of victory, let's see if it rings all the way through to a win here. Okay. Fake out, Shoma's Incineroar not moving. The Sacred Fire this time, so the wrong call from Yoshitaka, or a call that didn't quite work in their favor, because it also means you cannot be burned because you are Terrifier. Calyrex is able to get those seeds sprouting up from the ground, and I think that's a really lovely position to be able to get it set up earlier than it was in the previous game.
Yeah, because the Calyrex is now kind of safe to sit on the field a little bit. Pressuring the Glacial Lances after you put the Leech Seed down is great because the Ho-Oh is more incentivized to switch out from Yoshitaka, and when it switches out, if whatever comes in takes a Glacial Lance for the privilege, then it's putting yourself in a much better spot and taking the advantage of the board position that you're creating. I think the really nice thing for Yoshitaka is that the Incineroar was able to get an Intimidate off onto the Calyrex Ice Rider and start to stop that being such a big threat. And I'm wondering, actually, thinking about it now, whether the Calyrex actually switching out into one of the Pokemon in the back for Yoshitaka and taking that Leech Seed recovery could be a really nice scenario here where the Brave Birds are doing a good amount of damage, but they're not really threatening any KOs right off the bat.
Knockoff, though, also not threatening the KO, but removing the leftovers is so massive. Means that it's just down to that Leech Seed recovery now onto that Calyrex Ice Rider. And Incineroar is going to be scuttling to the back for Shoma, coming in its place. Let's see what Shoma's going to be locking into. It's going to be Raging Bolt and Koraidon in the back once more, of course, and Raging Bolt so pivotal to threaten down damage onto this Ho-Oh.
Yeah, so like the big piece of the puzzle here, Glacial Lance coming back, it's only 1 Intimidate down, so does do pretty respectable damage to both Pokemon here. At the Leech Seed, actually, you can see how significant the HP damage is, but now also the HP recovery. Worth noting that the higher the HP of the target of Leech Seed, the more HP you're recovering turn after turn, and Ho-Oh, as with many other restricteds in this format, really do have quite high HP stats. So you normally get quite a lot of benefit from getting a Leech Seed onto those restricted Pokemon.
Of course, the drawback is you're not running another damaging move here, but often we'd see something like high horsepower, maybe a close combat, which also isn't that great into Ho-Oh. So Leech Seed could really put in a lot of work here. It was such a clinic that Yoshitaka put in game 1 with the Ho and Incineroar lead. It was essentially those two that soloed the entire game. It's brilliant to be able to see Shoma find their footing and find their way to come back into this matchup.
I think that's a really great call there, Charlie, because you know it's really difficult when you go up against a team that you don't recognize instantly. Maybe they do know of each other's teams, but when you're not quite sure what the matchup entails, you've got to find that game 1 where you can get a little bit of a handle on it. That's what Shoma's doing so well here with that Thunderbolt into the Incineroar.
And calling the fact that Ho would switch, and it brings Incineroar down dangerously low, but now Calyrex is gonna be a little bit softened up with that Glacial Lance that you said it was sharpening, Ben, but I think it's feeling a little bit blunter now after that parting shot. And now Yoshitaka switches in from the back. Gonna be the Ho-Oh or the unrevealed Pokemon? Will just be the Ho-Oh.
Yeah, it's looking more like a glacial pole there that could be coming out here rather than a Lance here. But Trick Room is the move of choice, so I really like this from Shoma trying to predict that the Koraidon might come in for Yoshitaka and try to go for those sort of speedier plays and bring in the Raging Bolt and try to take advantage of the fact that the overall speed advantage will be on Shoma's side in this situation.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, this matchup, because you don't want to set up the Trick Room too early. In both games, we haven't seen Shoma immediately go to the Trick Room option. That's partly due to the taunt in the second game, because, you know, there's still some speed tiers and interactions that you have to be very careful about, and let's see if the Trick Room's going to benefit them here. Of course, Ho-Oh isn't the fastest Pokemon, so it's definitely not just all over for Yoshitaka here, even though Trick Room is up.
Worth noting that this is an Assault Vest on the Raging Bolt on Yoshitaka's side. So if anything's going to be taking both Glacial Lances at 2-, but also those big attacks from the Life Orb Raging Bolt on Shoma's side, it's going to be this Assault Vest Raging Bolt going for its Terra Fairy.
Terra Fairy, so Dragon moves will be doing 0 damage into that slot. Ho-Oh just going to be scouting out for a turn with its Protect. Now, Ho-Oh not taking damage from the Glacial Lance, but certainly Yoshitaka's Raging Bolt will. Just go for a little bit of chip, of course. The Intimidate is going such a long way, but attempted a Thunderclap, it looked like, into the Ho-Oh there. Oh, well, Draco Meteor connecting into Shoma's Raging Bolt. Goodbye, yeah. That Raging Bolt is 100% down and out. This is the advantage Yoshitaka needed to take in this game 3.
I kind of think this Trick Room environment is actually starting to benefit Yoshitaka a little bit more than Shoma here, because with the Trick Room, the Raging Bolt, even if it's at 2-, a Draco Meteor would still probably be enough to knock out the Koraidon in this spot, which kind of forces Shoma to bring the Incineroar back in and start trying to play the slow game. But if you do that, then there's an Incineroar in the back for Yoshitaka that can switch in, maybe sacrifice itself to an attack, and then come back in with a Raging Bolt and start pressuring some big Thunderbolts coming down into Shoma's side. And Calyrex with 2- on its attack is not going to be able to knock this Raging Bolt out anytime soon.
This clear amulet on Yoshitaka's Ho-Oh is putting in so much work thanks to the Intimidate drops from the Incineroar. And I love that Yoshitaka has recognized, okay, sure, my Koraidon is vulnerable given it is not holding the clear amulet, so maybe I'm going to index more on my Ho-Oh, but that is valuable information for Shoma to use too. But at the same time, Shoma's now lost their Raging Bolt, so the Ho-Oh is looking all the safer, and it could just be that Ho-Oh once more can channel all that Sacred Fire, the power it used to revive those legendary beasts in Generation 2, and maybe see Yoshitaka swooping all the way through to victory here. The time ticks down for Shoma. Really couldn't have been more down to the wire there. Ho-Oh will now get some lovely regenerator recovery in the back.
Yeah, then give the opportunity for Shoma to maybe attack down into it. I'd have thought the Raging Bolt would be switching out there into the Incineroar, but Yoshitaka definitely has other plans for this to be coming in, maybe thinking that it's not going to be knocked out on the switch-in.
just a knockoff, and that isn't enough to secure the KO onto Yoshitaka's Incineroar, but certainly will be removing the Rocky Helmet from contention. Now, the Draco Meteor is going to be connecting again in Shoma's Calyrex. Of course, it had its special attack harshly reduced after the first one. You can see just how well Calyrex took that as a result.
Yeah, I really like this situation for Yoshitaka. Getting the Incineroar in without having to sacrifice it to an attack is a really, really big deal here. Getting the fake out on the board gives a lot of flexibility for the Raging Bolt to then switch out into the Ho-Oh while the fake out goes off. And I think if Yoshitaka lost the Incineroar and then could get the Raging Bolt straight back onto the field, they'd be pretty happy about that situation overall. But I think all eyes are on this Koraidon that we know is in the back for Shoma as to the Pokemon that really could turn this around and get Shoma the win that he's so desperate to be able to lock in round 5.
Of course, if you do KO that Incineroar on such low HP, then you do get a Chilling Neigh boost on your Calyrex Ice Rider, and the more you set up the Leech Seed, of course, now with the leftovers removed, the more of a threat that Calyrex becomes, the harder it is to get rid of, and the harder it's going to hit. Koraidon revealed for Yoshitaka now, finally. Fake out, so Calyrex won't be moving. Love that play, means that Koraidon can get in so much safer. U-turn, that now will be enough to secure the KO onto the Incineroar, and that is wonderful news for Shoma, because the Calyrex is oh so vulnerable to those attack drops.
Yes, like the Incineroar coming out here is usually the positive momentum that you really want in that situation. I think that's still true with the Koraidon being able to come in here and to be able to be in the sun as Yoshitaka's Koraidon just reset that up. But it does allow one Pokemon to come into the back and give Yoshitaka that little bit of positive momentum. And I don't think there's momentum as positive as bringing a Ho-Oh in at full HP.
There certainly isn't. You do still, though, have access to Incineroar over on Shoma's side of the field, and that's going to be such a thorn in Yoshitaka's side, just wanting to remove that as quickly as possibly can. Now, this could be a turn where the scale shot on Yoshitaka's Koraidon comes into contention once more. Shoma has gone for the Terra Fire onto the Calyrex Ice Rider, and that means that their own Koraidon is so vulnerable to those Dragon-type moves. And let's not forget that this game has not had the loaded dice removed, so it will be hitting at least 4 times.
One thing to note as well, and thank you for Shoma for showing us that, is that the Trick Room is on its last turn here. So the speed advantages are going to be changing in the next turn, and I really like the way that Shoma now is trying to position ready for that to happen, bring the Incineroar in, probably play a little bit defensively with the Calyrex and try to set up a second Trick Room.
Seed now onto the Ho-Oh. Again, so lovely for Shoma to be able to make this Calyrex unremovable or near to there, as a Brave Bird now connects into Shoma's Incineroar. Swooping down from the skies, not enough for the KO, but how about this collision course, this signature move of Koraidon? Yeah, Shoma's Calyrex has fed on its last grass. That will be Calyrex Ice Rider returning to the stables, and now Shoma is just going to have the one Pokemon in the back, the Koraidon, and it could just be that this restricted duo that we, and I cannot emphasize this enough, never see, will be securing Swiss round 5 for Yoshitaka.
Yes, like I really like the way that Yoshitaka's playing this as well, is just hedging. Well, I'm either going to try to get a knockoff on or knockout on one Pokemon or the other, where the terrestrialization has been used for Shoma so early in the game, and now getting the full advantage of that, where okay, yeah, Trick Room is over, but Yoshitaka's Pokemon are so high HP that it doesn't really matter which one attacks the Incineroar, that's going to be knocked out. But also Yoshitaka has that Koraidon advantage with having the scale shot at their disposal as well to be able to try and deal with the Koraidon on Shoma's side. So a big advantage here for Yoshitaka. He's played this game 3 so well after coming out with a lost game 2. Shoma just changing up the matchup so much, and Yoshitaka finding a way to carry a lot of success here in game 3.
Something you have to bear in mind here, Ben, is Shoma's Your Time is ticking all the way down here. So timer things could come into contention, but I mean, with this KO onto Incineroar, Yoshitaka overwhelmingly has the Pokemon advantage here. 3 to Shoma's 1. Let's see just how swiftly this game will be concluded. The low kick, not enough for the KO onto the Koraidon, but yeah, this could just be the Area 0 hero that is just being given a big no.
Could well be. I mean, both Pokemon here do have the opportunity to knock out this Koraidon, at the same time. Koraidon can only attack one Pokemon at once, and I think it's probably feeling quite sad about that particular scenario there. But yeah, well played to both of our players here as we get into the final turn. The scale shot
here we go.
Starting to land in. It's going to hit at least 4 times, but 4 might not be enough to pick up the KO here.
Here's 4. It's super effective. The tech that we haven't seen on Koraidon for a very long time. It will be hanging on now. That's just going to be the 4 hits, but of course Ho-Oh is ready and raring to deliver the finishing blow as now Koraidon gets one more attack for glory off. Not going to be enough. And responding with the tailwind, Yoshitaka just making sure there's no room for error.
I love that as well because, you know, it just extends that time that you're on the stage just that little bit along, a little bit further. You don't get many opportunities at the World Championships to go on stage. You gotta take what you can get here.
Yeah, Yoshitaka used Follow Me and it was super effective. But now this Koraidon, unfortunately, just seems not to have enough gas left in the tank. Shoma looking like they're locking in the, well, about to lock in the forfeit, but now it's like, you know what, no, I want to extend that limelight even further. Yeah, give me some more.
Keep me on the stage, Charlie.
But you also, of course, want to play to every single one of your outs here. It is the World Championships. You came here for a reason, flew halfway across the globe. Let's see if we can secure it. As now Raging Bolt, Terra Fairy joins the field once more. Yoshitaka again, just dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making sure there's no room to be caught off guard by Shoma's team. But with this final collision course, Koraidon being given a taste of his own medicine on Shoma's side, the 2015 World Champion has been felled. Yoshitaka Izawa, the only Ho-Oh bringer in the tournament, has just stamped their ticket undefeated through to Swiss round 6.
Wow. I mean, really, wow. The ability to navigate what is actually overall quite a difficult matchup for you if you get out of position. We saw that so much in Game 2 where Shoma was able to take the advantage, and it felt really difficult for Yoshitaka to deal with that Terrafire Calyrex Ice Rider, but then to come back in Game 3 and to be able to actually take the win and do it so convincingly as well.